Hello everybody, is the thing on? Marty McConnell, the off-grid gecko here, and today I'm going to be looking for some pine pollen. I'll clue you in on the details later. Pine pollen comes from, you guessed it, pine trees. Now when we normally think of a pine cone, we're thinking about something like this. You know, these big woody things that drop the seeds. But pine trees actually make two different kinds of cones. These are produced later in the fall and in the winter, and then they drop their seeds and little pine trees pop up everywhere. But where do they get the pollination for these seeds? And where do these pine cones get their seediness from? Well, they get it from a seed which is dropped in the spring. They actually get it from a pollen that the tree produces. So pine trees will produce pollen on the very highest tips, and then that pollen comes down with the air. Probably, I assume it's mostly air driven. Some insects could be involved there, but pine pollen is basically designed to flower at the top of the tree with these specialized pine cones. They're actually a male pine cone. These are female pine cones. So the female pine cones drop the seeds, the male pine cones drop the pollen. And all you need to collect it is a little jar of some sort. And you got to be willing to shimmy your way up a pine tree, unless you have some short ones around. And I'm going to take a look for minute and see if I can find a couple specimens, because I know there's some smaller pine trees in this area of the forest that I'm at right now. Just have to find them. But let me show you what one of these male pine cones can look like. They have different looks depending on the particular species of pine tree, but that doesn't matter a whole lot. Unless you're just following the crowd. Can't believe these cats followed me all the way out here. Alright, so I'm going to find a male pine cone and then I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to try my best to keep this guy in focus. So this is a mature male pine cones on the end of the sprig here. Got this from a low-hanging branch, and you'll know they're mature because if you take it off and rub it between your fingers, you get coated in yellow pine pollen. So I don't know how well you can see that. Kind of a limited exposure here, but yeah, so this is stuff you want. Now some pine trees are much better at producing lots of it than others. My pine trees here are I can't think of the species right now, but they're not one of the favorite pine species, but they do still produce quite a lot of pollen powder. So as long as these guys haven't emptied themselves in the wind today, there should be some that are still good to go. So I'm just going to start collecting the whole cones and dumping them in my little bucket. Okie dokie. Where's my screen? Okay. I think I got more pine pollen on me than I got in the bucket, but I managed to get a whole bunch of these little male pine cones. And the pollen season kind of sneaks up on me every year, so totally missed out last year. I need to figure out what to do with these. So in addition to male pine cones, I got a whole bunch of needles in here, about 10 spiders, and some little sticks and twigs and some other stuff. Spiders like to hang out on these things. I don't think I've ever been bitten by one while I was collecting pine stuff, but I think it's because the butterflies and stuff will go after the pine pollen, and spiders are right there to jump out and grab them whenever they show up. But I got a pretty good little amount here. I'm just not sure how I'm going to separate it from what I've got. So if you shake it, you know, it makes a bunch of dust in there, but it doesn't really, you know, it's sticky, so it sticks to everything, including the pine cones themselves. So I might do a little research this afternoon and figure out the best way to get the actual pollen out of the mixture, and it might be as easy as just tossing this in a food processor and then running it through a sieve, but we'll find out. If you got any suggestions on how to do that easy and you want to help me out, go ahead and leave it in the comment. I'm all ears. But in the meantime, lick a little off my fingers here. So pine pollen, Bee pollen's kind of the same way, but there's been some testing done on pine pollen because this has become a product apparently that health food stores can sell, and yeah, I'm not going to get into my stance on that. But some preliminary testing shows in rats, in human cells, cell cultures, that pine pollen can actually inhibit like the process of cell division. So it's thought that it can slow down aging, that it can slow down or completely stop the spread of cancer throughout the body. Dozen other uses. It supposedly boosts your sex drive, and it contains about 8% testosterone by weight. Some pine pollens. So it's fairly potent stuff. And there's a few other little medicinal uses for it too. Unfortunately, because of the way the internet works and the way that the link economy works, it's hard to find any real good information. To my knowledge, there hasn't ever really been a human test on. Just a second. I just picked the tick off of me, and any tick that I find on me is doomed to die, death by fire. What will I say? Subscribe, tell your friends, link the video, help me out, and if you got a way to separate the pine pollen from the little male cones, drop it in a comment. The only last remaining remark that I'll make about this stuff is you are going to get covered when you're trying to get this stuff out of the trees, and it takes about 3 or 4 hands to get it off a branch and actually to get the pollen to fall into your deal. That's why I just knocked the whole cone off in there, because I figure I got the best chance of getting more pollen out that way, rather than trying to rattle the tree and hope that the wind doesn't carry away the pollen as soon as it drops out of the little pod. So a day that's not very windy would be good for this also. Right. And all the other things. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.